Hello and welcome to Spy Hards podcast. I'm Agent Scott.
And I'm Cam the Provocateur, fulfilling an old man's mystic destiny.
Oh boy.
You don't want to know, Scott. You do not want to know.
That sounds very dusty.
There are platinum wigs abound.
Oh, I don't want to know what's in your closet. We're back with our favorite men from U.N.C.L.E.
That's right.
This week. The seventh film we're going to jump into in just a second. It's been quite the ride with our boys so far.
It's a winding road, Scott. A winding road.
Guys and girls at home, I know you are clamoring for more U.N.C.L.E. action, so here it is. Cam, roll it. Cam, it's been a long road getting from there to here. You know, you could say it's flown by, which is an appropriate pun, I suppose. But we're getting to the point where these films need genuine experts to decipher. And I sought out perhaps the best of the best. Joining us on the show this week, she is a professor at St. Peter's University in Jersey City, New Jersey, and she's even written a book entitled Work Text Investigating the Man from U.N.C.L.E., which I have a copy of myself, which might also give you a hint as to what this week's film is. Joining us is none other than Dr. Cynthia Walker. Hello, Cynthia. How are you?
Hi, guys. How you doing? Good to be here.
Living the dream. We're glad to have you. I mean, we've had to put up with the likes of Bill Koenig on the show talking about the Man from U.N.C.L.E. I thought we would class up the joint and bring you on instead.
Well, Bill's pretty classy, too. We know each other probably over 30 years at this point.
His blog on the history of U.N.C.L.E. has been invaluable when it came to my research, so I can't thank Bill enough.
We could.
Yeah, actually, right now we have a fans from U.N.C.L.E. website that comes up fairly high on Google. You may have seen it. It hasn't been updated in the last couple of years, and the reason why was because the people who ran it had some serious personal family problems. So about a year ago, they asked me to pay for it and take it over, which I have. My son has a master's degree in data analysis, and he does do websites, but right now he's working full time. He works in Wildwood, New Jersey. He works for the Morey's Corporation, and he's in the office a lot. So he has the opposite of what I have. I'm off for the summer and I work in the winter, and he's works very hard during the summer, and then he's off around Christmas time, usually between October and March. So we're going to update the fans' website because it really needs it right now. The information is still good, but it hasn't been updated in quite a number of years.
And I've heard there's been like a really good series of podcast episodes covering the Man from U.N.C.L.E. films that might sit pretty on there, you know?
Yeah, from here. We will definitely put this on, sure. And if you've seen Bill's website, he has quite a lot of good materials there. He even there's a behind the scenes when they did the Man from U.N.C.L.'s DVD set, and he has that. And actually, I'm in it, so you'll see me there too.
I recognize you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've used Bill's website. I think we've also referenced John Heitland's book, The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Yes, yes.
That's also been invaluable. You compare that to, say, something like James Bond, where there's just copious amounts of resources on those films. It's a little scarce on the ground when it comes to The Man from U.N.C.L.E. So I'm glad that through this show we're able to continue the discussion about the films. I know that a TV show, of course, but we're looking at it through the prism of the film versions.
Sure.
But I want to strip away all these layers about the Man from U.N.C.L.E. and get a bit about you, Cynthia, and get us into the Man from U.N.C.L.E. personally, because there's not many people that can say they've written a book about the Man from U.N.C.L.E. You're one of them.
Not only that, I've had lunch and have had many conversations with Norman Felton, Sam Rolfe,
Wow.
Robert Vaughn, and David McCallum, and some of the other creative people too. You all know, Bill mentioned it, that he was talking about Robert Vaughn being who unfortunately is not with us anymore. But he was somewhat of an intellectual. He has a PhD and in the same area that I have, communication. So he was very gracious and really helpful to me. So was David. My absolute favorite was Norman, but Robert was great. He was always open to things, and he was always willing to answer my questions.
That's really interesting to hear because Scott and I both come from the Star Trek fan world and have gone to many conventions. That's how we met. And you really do see a real mix of the relationship between star and property when it
Right.
comes to like the original Star Trek. Like William Shatner, if I were to sit down with him and start asking him Star Trek questions, it's not going to go well. He is not going to have a lot of patience for me. And so it's great to hear that like when you were actually reaching out to Robert Vaughn or David McCallum, they were actually willing to answer your questions.
Well, one of the reasons they were, I actually interacted with Norman first, Norman Felton. And Norman Felton I met through two different ways. One was through Man from Uncle fandom, but also he was a great proponent of media literacy and he funded media literacy centers. So he funded one in California, which I think is gone now. But he also funded ours. My PhD comes from Rutgers University in New Jersey, and we had for a time. I don't know if it's still there anymore because the professor who ran it is deceased. But it was a Center for Media Studies, and we were developing media literacy. I was anyway. And Norman funded our center for a couple of years. So basically, he paid my salary for
Hmm.
a couple of years too. I had a very unusual situation because I was married 20 years before I had my son, and that was 1992. He was born, and 6 weeks after that, I met with Sam Rolfe at a SpyCon in Chicago, and Bill had also mentioned this in his podcast that in the 1990, I'm sorry, it was yeah, it was right around 1992 when I met with him in Chicago. He had a kind of running conversation, maybe not quite a deal yet, with TNT to bring back the Man from Uncle as a second generation, which Bill mentioned to you guys. And I had been writing. I write fan fiction. I've been writing for a long time, and I have lots of awards from it. And Norman knew this and said, "You should meet with Sam." And I did. And Sam and I had very similar ideas about how to. I thought it should be a cable series at the time, too. So Sam said, "Well, I'm working with TNT right now, but I'm going to write the pilot. And when I get that going and we signed the deal, he said, I'll tell Norman. Norman will contact you and then we'll talk." And I said to him, because I teach script writing, by the way, I've been to Hollywood and stuff. So none, none of them actually made it to the screen, but you know how this works.
Hmm.
So Norman said, get in touch with, Sam would get in touch with you. And I said, okay. And I said to Sam at the time, gee, I don't have an agent. And Sam, you guys knew a little bit about Sam, but he wrote a lot of Westerns, and he said, honey, when I hire you, you'll have an agent. And I said, okay. So I came home very happy and told my husband, we're headed for Hollywood. And then the following June, this was November, end of October into November. Sam dropped dead from a heart attack at 65 on a tennis court, and that was the end of that. So I decided to continue my academic studies and just be an academic. And I thought, I guess that's what I'm supposed to be doing here. So in fact, this year I've been teaching over 40 years, but this year I'll be 20 years at St. Peter's. So yeah,
Wow.
that's what happened with me. So you said about Robert and David dealing with me. Part of the reason was that Norman wrote them letters. and said, deal with this person. This is an academic person. It's not just some fan writing you letters or anything. And because of that, both of them, especially Robert, because again, he had done a PhD, and we used to commiserate on the phone about doing it. And he did his PhD. You probably know Only Victims. He did a study of Joe McCarthy, but his influence on the theater district. So Robert told me that he had a very hard time getting people to talk to him.
Hmm.
So he was always very sympathetic that way. And he actually called me a couple of times. So the first time he was away in Australia, and David called me the day after he got the letter from Norman, and I had lunch with him in New York. But Robert was away in Australia making one of the smaller movies that he said to me, I do it for money. And when he came, so one day I was home and I got this phone call and I picked up the phone and I hear this voice say, "Is this Dr. Walker? This is this is Robert Vaughn." And I almost dropped the phone. I mean, it was like it was kind of spooky. And yeah, so he was very nice. He had a very dry sense of humor. I used to see him about while I was writing it. He sometimes, if he remembered something, he actually bumped into Bill at a conference, a fan con, and he said to me, I, "There's this guy in Chicago that knows a lot," and I said, "Yeah, that's Bill." um, it was like that, you know. Um, but one time I brought my son, he was 5 years old at the time, and I kept showing him Man from Uncle posters. And I pointed to it and I said, "We're going to see this man." So we went, it was Creation Con, and they used to have it in New Jersey around Halloween. So
Mm-hmm.
Robert lived in Connecticut, and he would drive down and he'd do, autographs and pictures and things. So I'd go see him. He'd say, "How's it coming?" I'd tell him how. And then he looked down at my son one time and he said, "I bet you're sick of seeing my face." And my son just like looked at him. It was really funny. So he had a very dry sense of humor, and sometimes you didn't expect it when it would come. It would be like all of a sudden he'd say something, you'd think, "Oh, did he just say that?" So yeah, so I saw him a couple of times. He called me, I called him. One time we were trying to arrange a phone call, and he had his children were in soccer at the time, and my son was in an after school program, and we were coordinating how we would do this, like what time, what day. In fact, one time he said, "Well, we could do it on Thursday." And I said, "You're going to be in Australia again on Thursday." He goes, "Oh yeah, I forgot." His wife actually kept his, I think, kept his schedule. So, so I found that very weird to be talking to Napoleon Solo on the phone and trying to coordinate our kids after school programs, which is, not expected, right? So that was some of what I was experiencing.
It's a weird little moment of serendipity and connectivity in that story there. You mentioned like creation conventions, and that's the convention company that brought Cam and I together
Oh, okay.
many moons ago in their Las Vegas show. And it's just like it's lovely how these fandoms used to connect through these things. I feel like it's a bit of a
Yes.
dying art now. I mean, I remember going back to conventions in the early noughties, and they're a different beast to now. I imagine different
Yes.
90s and previous decades.
Well, I do a lot of work in fandom, not just Man from Uncle fandom, but fandom. So I do know Star Trek fans quite a bit, and I know the individual women, some of who are gone now, unfortunately, who actually arranged the first Star Trek convention.
Right.
And they used
Mm-hmm.
to tell me the behind the scenes stories. One time, Jimmy Doohan was at a convention and he was really hungry. I think it was in the Midwest somewhere. And one of them said, "Oh, my grandmother makes lasagna." And he was like, "Oh, and they brought him over to her grandmother's house for lasagna that night. So they used to tell me these stories. So I know a lot of Star Trek, the original Star Trek people. And yeah, so yeah, I did do. I used to go. It's not going anymore, but there used to be a Media West Con that was at Memorial Day weekend. It was in Lansing, Michigan. It was at one of the hotels there, and it was a fan writers convention. No stars. We would. I did two writing seminars for about 30 years there, and they finally stopped doing it a couple of years ago. But what you just said, we used to see each other. That's how I used to know Bill. I used to see Bill at conventions all the time,
Yeah.
either academic conventions that I was maybe in Chicago or someplace around where he was, and he'd come over and we'd have supper or lunch or something. But I used to see him every year at Media WestCon, and we all, at one point, I guess it was around 2000, I guess around 2000, in the late 90s into 2000. At one point, we had 700 Man from Uncle fans come.
Hmm.
And we used to have, right now, by the way, Bill said that we're kind of hidden. We're not really. If you go on Facebook, the Man from Uncle inner, I forget what they call it, but it's over 5,000 people on it. So,
Wow.
s-
Well, there's a question though that I feel like we're dancing around, which we should have asked up front. For you, we're talking about fandom. What started your fandom with Man from Uncle?
my dad, who is deceased, my mother got very. I was the only child till I was 16. Then my sister was born. Oops. But before that, it was just me. And my mother got very ill and sort of checked out for about years, between the age of about 10 to 13, which are the Man
Hmm.
from Uncle years, by the way.
Hmm.
So my mother was, we'd say hi, Ma, pretty much. But so I'd go out with my father, and we went to, in fact, all the people that I played with in my neighborhood were male, six guys and me. So we played Man from Uncle too. But before that, my father used to take me to all the movies that were cowboy movies, John Wayne movies. Oh God, Spartacus. I saw them all at those days. The drive-in, and he would watch TV. So not the first year of Uncle, but that fall. So it would be not the first season, but into starting the second season. Like it was the summer reruns.
Hmm.
And my father called me up one day upstairs and said, "Come here, come here, come here. You have to see this show." So I came, sat down next to him, and yes, I liked the show. So I started watching it, but I wasn't in any fandom except for my neighborhood. And I was always Napoleon solo. Yes, I'm female, but I was not April Dancer. I was not one of the innocents. I was Napoleon. And my father, who collected guns, when he died, he had 41, and he was a hunter and a fisherman. But he was so thrilled that I liked Man from Uncle and that I needed guns. So when I wanted to buy the Man from Uncle gun, which was 4.99 at the time, my mother was like, that in those days, $5. What I came from a working class, fairly poor family. So she said, $5. My father was like, go ahead, buy it. He bought it for me. And then he designed a shoulder holster for me to wear under my Catholic school blazer.
This is not something we've had other guests say.
No, I went to Catholic school. And in those days, you could walk around well, there weren't malls, there were just stores, but you could walk around with a jacket and a gun. I was armed as a child almost all the time. So, so I hung around with my neighborhood. We each had roles. One person played James Bond all the time. Person played Alexander Waverly. We even had a setup with the Globe. One of the moms, the let us use their basement room, so we were set up like Uncle headquarters, and we used to break into each other's houses, and we ran around with guns, and we did all this. I have pictures, in fact.
I feel bad for the kid who played Waverley because it's quite a sedate job. Compared to the rest of you, like doing international spy jinx, and he's like, I'm just gonna send them on missions and sit here and eat nachos.
He volunteered. He
Okay.
said he would do it. So everybody apparently was happy with their roles. So I was blind. I should have been Ilya, but I wasn't.
Mm.
Like I said, I wore a jacket. And my friend actually, who is married these days, he was taller than me and he was dark haired, but he played Ilya. So I don't know why we just picked the characters that we liked. So we did.
Did he do the accent? I have to
No,
know.
no, he didn't. He didn't.
Oh, we didn't commit all the way.
No. So we did this for about 3 years in the neighborhood, and yes, we're going to probably talk about fourth season, and because that's
Mm.
Helicopter Spies is part of that. But once it got canceled, and then I went through high school. And then I kept a lot of my uncle's stuff, which I still have. I have some of my books and things. But I had the gun, and it was downstairs, the plastic gun, in my shoulder holster. And I was getting married. I got married when I was 20 because my sister
Mm.
was born, and I just didn't want to be in a house with a baby. So I was ready. And I had dated my husband, who is still my husband, by the way. We are married 50 years. Uh,
Congratulations.
Thank you. In fact, last year we were 50 years. I met him in high school. And when I was getting married, my father was cleaning out the cellar, and he said to me, "You don't need your uncle gun anymore, right?" And I said, "No," and he tossed it out. I had to rebuy one.
Oh my
Can you
God.
imagine? Yes. So I didn't toss my books. We didn't have any. I had audio tapes, but we didn't have videotape at that time. Um, and so it kind of disappeared. However, over the years, I always kept it in the back of my head. And I went to the museum, I forget what they call it now, but it was a museum of television in New York City.
Hmm.
And they had one or two episodes of Uncle. It was very hard to find at that point. And then another friend of mine found it on a Spanish channel, Spanish speaking channel. So I used to come over to her house every Saturday and we'd watch it in Spanish.
Hmm.
She could translate, so we were watching all the things I had missed most of the black and white episodes, so we were catching up on things. And how did I get into fandom? Well, this is interesting because Robert Vaughn had appeared. I think it was a creation con, or it was one of those cons. It wasn't a spy con. It was in New York and was on Labor Day weekend. It was about mid 80s. But previous to that, I had watched the Return movie, which came out in 82, I think. And lots of I mean, we loved it the first time we saw it because it was there they were. But
Mm.
I had different ideas. So I started working on a novel and it went through like three or four permutations, but I had this novel. So it was in back of my head, maybe someday, you know. I Robert Vaughn appeared at this convention in New York on Labor Day weekend, and I went in, didn't know anybody, was not involved in fandom at the time, and I was looking for a seat that was close that I could see him. And there was a seat open by these two women. So I just came over and I said, "Hi, can I sit down here?" And they said, "Sure." And we started talking. And one of her name is Nan Mack, and the other one was Pat, but Pat is deceased, so she's gone now. But Nan is still a good friend of mine. In fact, I texted with her this morning, and she started telling me about Uncle Fandom. And I knew Star Trek fandom, you know, because but I didn't know anything about Uncle Fandom. So she started, and again, this is before there's an internet. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
my husband was into computers, so he's retired now, but he had work. So I had a computer before most people did. I had Word. What the hell did we call it at the time? It wasn't Word, it was something else. But
The word perfect?
oh, no, even before that, we were using I'm
Oh,
trying to
okay.
think what we used. She was laughing about it the other day, in fact. Anyway, I met her and I told her about in fact, I sent her my novel and she said, "This is really good." Did you know that there are zines for this? And I knew about Star Trek zines, but I didn't know that there were Uncle zines. And she said, oh, yeah. So she started connecting me to other people that she had, like, really didn't have strong ties to, but she got the zines and things like that. And eventually she said, there's a convention. There's a Media West convention. We should go to it. And I said, okay. So we went to it on Memorial Day weekend, and we met all the other Uncle fans and the Uncle editors. And they looked at
Hmm.
my stuff and said, "Oh, yeah, we can publish this." So I was like, "Okay." So I started getting published, and there are awards, and I got a couple of the awards. And then because I teach writing, I've been a journalist for probably about 50 years since I've been 17. Well, I'm not,
Hmm.
yeah. So I was first a movie critic for 20 years, and then I was a theater critic for 20 years. So for a regional newspaper in New Jersey. So, I kind of knew how Hollywood worked. And I've been teaching college, and I teach writing and journalism, all that. So, yeah. So that's how I got into fandom. We started going every year. I started seeing the editors. I started bringing stories and rewrote the novel and eventually published the novel. And my stuff right now, I have 100 stories on AO3. I don't know.
Wow.
Do you guys know what AO3 is? You should look it up. That's where there's fanfiction.net. That's where all the fan writers. Uncle used to
Hmm.
be in the top 100. I'd have to go look again. But when I was doing my research way back, in fanfiction .net, we were one of the top fan. We had most of the stories, but a lot of fans don't like to publish on fanfiction.net. They used to, for various reasons. So I was actually part of this. Some what they call ACA fans, academics who are fans, got together and started AO3, and you
Hmm.
can look it up. And now most of the fans publish their stuff there because it's fan run. So we know, and we also have lawyers involved just in case. So there are fan lawyers and fan academics, and that's where my stuff is right now. My fan fiction.
It's nice to hear that there is still a community for these, and
Oh
I don't
yes,
wish to speak about the Man from U.N.C.L.E. as if it's some sort of dead brand. I mean, there was a major motion picture uh,
yeah.
about just short of a decade ago.
2015. Yep.
Yeah. Is it bang on? Wow. Okay. And I want to guide us into the Helicopter Spies in a second, but you mentioned the journalism part, and the journalistic thing in my head just went off there because there's a question I think that needs to be asked. You mentioned fanzines and being heavily involved in it, and one thing that was quite heavy in the Star Trek world was a lot of the slash fiction that still gets
Yes.
spoken about now.
Still,
Um, is that a thing in the Uncle world?
it is, and I don't write slash. I write
Sure.
pretty. No, I have some of my best friends are slash writers. So I've actually been a consultant, and I've even done some proofreading and editing and things like that.
Cool.
Actually, so if you go into academic studies and research now on fandom, which is, as you guys pointed out, has been changed because of the internet.
Yeah.
But I have argued, and it's actually caught on in academia, that Uncle is the you are fandom before Star Trek.
Hmm.
Because a lot of the things that, if you guys know Star Trek fans,
Hmm.
a lot of the Star Trek fans actually started out in Man from Uncle, but they were very young, so they couldn't do anything. And it wasn't until these fans, one of them is Paula Smith, who was a very good friend of mine. She was my editor for many years. And she's one of the people who was also involved in starting the Star Trek um, um, conventions. She really started out in Uncle. And what happened was Slash started in Star Trek, and it started as K/S,
Hmm.
Kirk Spock. So that's why it's called
I'm very
Slash.
familiar.
Okay. So that got transferred over to Uncle very quickly. And unfortunately, again, the person who started it in Uncle is no longer with us, but Denisha, but she was very popular. And it was obvious in Uncle because of Solo and Ilya. Nobody else was important. And on top of it, their PR guy, Chuck Painter, who was the one who was behind all the publicity and all the PR efforts, was gay.
Wow.
And they were all friends with him.
Hmm.
And there is in Cherry Blossom Affair at the very end, David McCallum is sitting on a couch and as Ilya, and Solo says something, and Ilya turns and does this thing with his hair, and he goes, "Well, I'll listen to your story." Like
Yeah.
it's like an
It's
it's an inside joke
it's a
to Chuck
tease.
Painter,
It's
is
a
what it is.
tease.
It's
Yeah.
a tease,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of the fans went, "Oh, look, look, look at that! See, see, there is something going on." So I think there was a lot of slash where it's very hard to deny Napoleon Solo's sexuality, which is all over the place. He
Hmm.
he in you guys want to talk about helicopter spies. He gets grabbed and kissed by four women in it. It's just constant. So he was often shown to be bisexual, and then Ilya was the one who was gay, and they would mix it. So there's all kinds of sexuality in Uncle fandom. There's straight, there's bi, there's slash, less slash, but you know, it was kind of there, and the guys used to joke about it too. In fact, they knew about it. If you see them at the Emmys where they go up together and they're almost like holding hands and then they hold the Emmy together, that's like a little joke.
I feel like that. I need to find a clip of that now and put it on our social media this week so you can all watch the moment where it was almost alluded to. Um, well,
Yeah.
let's get to Helicopter Spies. Is what we want to talk about. That's the film. Cam, I did your job and introduced it.
Yes, Helicopter Spies, released in 1968, and it was the film version of the Prince of Darkness affair, which aired early October 1967 from season 4, Man from Uncle.
And if you're unfamiliar with the film, here is your synopsis. And I'm not taking it from letterbox.com because it has one line on there. And I don't think it really does a good job of putting together the film. So here is it from IMDb. And it says, an African village is nearly exterminated by a deadly weapon, the thermal prism. Napoleon and Ilya must find it first before it can be used again for the conquest of the world.
Boom.
There you
Yeah.
go. That's a premise.
There's not that much difference between the movie and the television show. If you
No,
watch
not much.
them together, you'll see there's some extra. They threw in a little sexuality like they used to. I can go into why we have these films, but there's a little more sexuality, a little more violence, but not a whole lot more. I think the film runs 90 minutes, almost 100 minutes, and the TV show was 2 episodes, which are in those days were almost 50 minutes apiece. So there's really not a whole lot cut in it or even added. The Bradford, was it Bradford Dillman? He has a wife, and she's got some lovers on the side in the movie, but not in the TV show. They always had to clean up, or they would add in, as you guys know, when you did the podcast with Bill, and you did To Trap a Spy, you talked about how they added on Luciano Paluzzi's sections. So they did that. Now, let me just say, with the movies, the reason there are movies is because Man from U.N.C.L.E. was owned in the old days, not so anymore, but in the old days, half of it was actually owned by Norman Felton. He retained 50% ownership of the show. He was very good friends with I'm trying to think what was his name now because they used to call him. Wait a minute, I probably have it somewhere, but the head of MGM who used to deal with TV shows. So MGM owned the other half of it, and MGM, it was Norman right from the beginning wanted to have two two-parters in each season. He would stick them together and make them movies for the foreign market, and MGM would then get some profits out of that. So
Right.
so MGM really wanted these movies. And so the only ones we could see in a theater in America, which I did when I was a kid, was To Trap a Spy, which you did with Bill, and Spy with My Face, which was really the double affair. And the two were put together. I went with my friends who we played Man from Uncle in the Backyard. That was the only one in the local theater. All the other ones from all the other seasons, and there's two for each season, including the shorter fourth season, were released in foreign markets for MGM to make profits on. But that's why there are 8 movies altogether.
Right. And what we like to talk about, we're going to focus on Helicopter Spies.
Okay.
And so let's just take us back. The first time you saw Helicopter Spies, your reaction to it. And that's the film, not the TV episode.
Right. So again, I could not see it in the theater. I had not seen Helicopter Spies until it came out, I would guess, on DVD. I have the DVD that you guys, I think, were talking about with Bill, where the 8 movies are.
Yeah.
I may have seen it sort of like on cable, or they used to run these things like, you remember at Saturday night at the movies, that kind of thing. So I probably caught it somewhere there, but I really didn't get to see it until it was on. I'm trying to think of. I know Bill was saying that he has a lot of stuff on VHS. So do I, by the way. We had to
Hmm.
bootleg everything for a while. Um, but I only saw it as Prince of Darkness. That's how I was familiar with it. Like I said, if you run the two together, you'll see that there's very little difference. There's uh, a couple of scenes where there are these lovers to his wife, his ex-wife, but not much.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, she's alone in the two-parter, but there's always a guy with her in the film. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. And then at one point, Solo comes back in because he really needs that connection to get to her ex-husband, and he grabs the phone and he comes in and he kind of messes things up, in their bedroom. On the television one, she just picks up a phone and he comes in that way, but there's no extra lover, so they threw that in. There's also a little bit more violence, a little bit more shooting. We can talk about sleep darts in a minute, but in Helicopter
Hmm.
Spies, there are no sleep darts. There are big gun battles, and even the guys, Ilya and Solo, are throwing people against the wall and breaking their necks and things like that. There's a bit more violence, a bit more action. Boris Sagal directed the movie, and he was a good action director. He died. He got decapitated on a movie that he was directing a couple of years afterward.
Yeah.
It was very sad.
We'll get to the behind the scenes in a second, and I'll kind of do a dive on the writer and the director. Yeah.
Okay, so not that much difference between them, and I didn't see the movie in a more relaxed way that I could actually absorb it until it came out on DVD.
Fair enough. Well, Cam, you've teased us. Why don't you take us behind the scenes of the Helicopter Spies?
Yes. So this was written by Dean Hargrove, who was a Kansas-born TV producer and writer. Began his career in the early '60s working on shows like The Bob Newhart Show and My Three Sons, Kraft Suspense Theater, before starting off a run of 11 Uncle episodes, beginning with the Never Never Affair, which co-starred Barbara Feldon. A real highlight, I think, from season 1. It's a great, great, fun episode.
And a previous guest on the show.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's the episode that I show my students when we go back. I do teach a history of television course, and naturally I'm going to show them Uncle, and
Of
that's
course.
usually the one I show.
That is a perfect one as an entry level. I agree. Yeah.
And we've reached out to this chap but not heard back, I think.
Who, Dean Hargrove?
I don't know about. I don't think he's passed, isn't he?
He's not. He's still with us.
I don't know Dean Hargrove, so
No.
he was one of the regular writers, though. And eventually, my husband was just he was flipping through channels the other day, and on Hallmark Mysteries, they have Diagnosis Murder with Dick Van Dyke, and that was a Hargrove show.
Oh, okay, okay.
He also did Matlock with
Yeah.
Andy Griffith.
Yeah, yeah. And the majority of his uncle work was really in season 2,
Right.
but he did come back for the Prince of Darkness affair in season 4, and that was it for him. I think Bill's research says there was an unproduced episode he may have worked on. But outside of or in within the world of Uncle, he didn't do anything else except for an episode of Girl from Uncle
Right.
as well. And the director of this was, as Cynthia said, Boris Sagal, who was born in the Ukraine, writer director in 1954 on a TV movie called A Man of Many Ideas, which starred a pre-Mission Impossible Peter Graves.
Hmm.
That was his first step into the world of film and television, and worked, like so many in that time period, on countless TV shows. He was working on Matinee Theater, Mike Hammer, Alfred
Yeah.
Hitchcock Presents, Dr. Kildare, and he did a 1963 film called Dime with a Halo, which I read the synopsis and I was intrigued. It's about 5 Mexican street urchins who steal a dime from a church's collection box and bet it on a horse race. And it starred Barbara Luna, who appeared in the classic
man.
Star Trek episode Mirror Mirror.
We have a very awkward photo with Cam.
We do. Yeah, there's a photo of you and me embracing Barbara Luna.
Oh,
I didn't even know I was going to be in the photo. I end up hugging her very tight, and she's a very small lady.
I don't know why we were hugging her. It wasn't our choice.
No,
We were directed to do it. We were like, okay.
it was consensual. Don't worry, but it was more just like she wanted us on her. I'll leave that there.
Fandom, right?
yep.
That's a slash fiction no one wanted.
Yeah. So this was actually Boris Sagal's only uncle work, and would work over the rest of his career primarily in television, although he did helm the 1971 Charlton Heston classic, The Omega Man, which was a popular cult film.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he was nominated for a DGA award in 1970 for the 1969 TV movie Destiny of a Spy, starring Lorne Greene, which I can now add to our Patreon list.
Okay. Well, that gives us something else to talk about that you find people can hear about on patreon.com/spyhards, and that's what we call a cheap plug.
That's right. And notably, Boris Sagal was the father of Katie Sagal,
Yes.
star of Married with Children, Futurama, Sons of Anarchy,
Oh.
The Connors.
That's right.
Yeah, like just enduring talent.
Right.
And as Cynthia also noted, died tragically at the age of 57.
Yeah.
He was filming a TV miniseries called World War III in Oregon, and got out of a helicopter and was disoriented or something and walked the wrong way into the rotor blade.
Sweet Jesus.
Yes.
Grief.
Yeah.
That's the ER Romano thing. That is.
Yeah,
That's not
right.
Wow. Okay. Whew.
Yeah, and so it was early in the production, so they had to bring someone else to direct World War III, but that was like a really tragic end.
What a horrible thing.
And so yeah, in terms of this this film, obviously when you are talking about a Man from Uncle film, you're very much talking about the TV production, and this was one of the show's most expensive episodes.
I can believe that.
It had more than 80 sets.
Yeah, and you can see that too, because if you watch the show or even the other movies, you'll see that most of it was on the MGM studio lot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Years ago, it's not there anymore, but if you went to Walt Disney World, they had a New York set in their MGM. They had an MGM Studios. They had a collaboration with them. They had the MGM Studio theme park, and it had a New York set, and it had DeFlorio's street. So at Christmas time, they would decorate it, and I always used to post a picture of DeFlorio being decorated for Christmas, and you could stand out front of DeFlorio's. It didn't say it, but it was so obvious that it was DeFlorio's, and there was the brownstones. It was kind of interesting. So yeah,
Oh, I would have loved to have seen that.
yeah, it's gone now. They plowed everything under for Star Wars, so
Ugh.
too bad.
Ugh.
But yeah, so,
Yeah.
so the 80 sets in fourth season, they Anthony Spinner if you want to talk about that, Anthony Spinner became the main producer. He was a very young guy at the time. He's gone on to, great things afterward, but he was very young. He's the one that made it more serious in the fourth season, and he also went over budget almost all the time. But for this
Mm.
particular movie, because Boris Sagal was connected to it and Dean Hargrove had written the script, if they're bringing back Dean Hargrove, that they're pretty serious about this one. And they had a
Hmm.
pretty good cast. Carol Lynley is in it, and Bradford, Dillman, all these people. Um, so they used some of the sets that are in Helicopter Spies. You won't see in any of the other shows or movies, because
Mm.
I don't know, to be honest, I don't know where the other sets came from, but they did do more, and you can appreciate it too. They're jumping around. We got so used to it. I mean, if we watch it as fans, we sit around, we go, there's the castle set, and there's what's supposed to be Holland. I mean, and here's the boat.
Yeah.
We know all that.
The airport set. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but they actually filmed it. There's that truck thing which is supposed to have the missile on it that they hijack, and so that all cost money because they used to film it in California. They used to go out on the road, but still, they did. This was a more extravagant movie compared to some of the other ones. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it premiered in London on February 22nd, 1968, a month after the final episode of the series had aired in the US. And like all the Uncle films, the box office information is lost to the sands of time. But the top three for that year were: number one was Funny Girl with Barbra Streisand, number two was 2001: A Space Odyssey, and number three was The Odd Couple.
Well, that makes sense. Certainly, 2001 was one of the groundbreaking movies at the time. Sure.
Not a bad year.
Not a bad one, no.
Mm.
No.
Yeah, but it wasn't a good year for Uncle, though.
Well, I think we've set it up beautifully. I think it's time to talk about the Helicopter Spies. I've got a lot to say. I'm sure Cam is full to the brim of notes, but the person I want to hear from right now is the professional. Is you, Cynthia? You've gone back and rewatched this film for us. How do you think it holds up in 2025? Is it an entertaining Man from Uncle film?
Um, well, it definitely represents fourth season. Um, it's not certainly one of my favorites. If I was going to choose a movie to show to somebody, I would either choose one of the first two, To Trap a Spy or Spy with My Face, which I tend to like, as I said, first season into second season. Um, the Spy in the Green Hat, which is Concrete Overcoat, is kind of fun, and that one
Mm-hmm.
is probably more expressive of what Uncle was really about. So it's not one of my favorites. Uh, there are a few moments that actually are in the movie and not in the TV show, which I was surprised too. Maybe they cut it because of time. At one point, Carol Lynley is at Uncle headquarters. She's kind of a pain in the butt, and Illy says, "Oh, I don't think we'll have too much trouble with her or something." And Solo looks at him like, "Are you kidding?" He just like he rolls his eyes because he's dealt with her in the first part of it, and he walks out, and right after that, all the alarms go off, and Illy goes running. But there are some moments between Ilya and Solo, which are nice, but they're not together very much, and that's one of the things. There are several, I don't know, attractions of Uncle, and one of them is the interaction between the two agents, which in Helicopter Spies both they're very seldom together. Either
Yeah,
one
yeah.
of them is getting tortured and the other one's saving them, or they reverse. So Solo gets into that with the sand pit, and in the first part, and saved by Ilya, and then Ilya gets captured, and Solo saves him. But they have very little time together, and that's really when they did the Return movie in 1982, that was one of the criticisms of that movie. They came together. The best part of that movie is them coming when they come together and talk together
Hmm.
and then they split up again. And I think there's a I don't know, misinterpretation. Oh, they would, it's not important putting the two agents together. Yes, it is. So I would say that there are moments of spies that I like, but not enough. And I think it's because the two of them are too separated.
I mean, it's been a thing I've noticed on several of the films. I've not been watching the show contemporaneously. Cam has, for the most part, and I think the magic is the connection,
Yes.
is the camaraderie, is the back and forth between the two of them, and so when you get that, it pops. But it happens in the previous films, and it happens in this. You're just like, I know it's the man from U.N.C.L.E. I know it was originally Solo, and it was about Napoleon Solo, and Ilya was a background character, blah, blah, blah. I know the story, but they knew they had something going in that first episode, and that's why it expanded and changed. It's like the writers of the show, and by proxy the film, almost are allergic to having them in scenes together. They like, maybe it's
Right.
easier dramatic writing for them to go, well, I'll push them away to bring them together at the end. And it's like shorthand to create tension and shorthand to create drama. I understand that. I find it lazy. I think it's I think it's almost a trickier task to write it as if they're together and working together throughout the whole film. And that's why you don't see it, because people will take the path of least resistance. And unfortunately, that is what happens here in Helicopter Spies. And I'll jump in with my thoughts, because Cams, you've been speaking for a while, so I'll let you have a break. Um, I was told early on that Helicopter Spies is one of the better ones.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, I know at the end you always choose like which movies make it,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Oh, we'll get there. Don't
Um,
vote yet. Hold your vote.
okay. I would say that it is of fourth season, it is one of the better ones. Prince of Darkness is probably considered one of the better ones, although the individual stories are good, but there was an over okay. Uncle the reason it was so popular, I think, this is my own personal theory, is because it was very much like Harry Potter. It was, what do they call that? Wainscot uh, uh, story in which Uncle's universe sits right next to our universe, our world. And you could just go, we used to call it pulling the coat hook. You pull the coat hook, Del Floria's opens up, and suddenly you're in another universe. Okay. And Harry Potter's attraction is the same way. Um, I think that was one of the major attractions to it. And I don't know if any of the producers, except for maybe Sam Rolfe, actually well, Norman did, but he was by the fourth season he was juggling a couple of different shows. But I don't. That was Norman's idea originally. He wanted to be immersive. He actually was a student of Marshall McLuhan, and realized that if he could make it so that Uncle bled into our universe, our lives, lots of people thought Uncle really existed. They actually, even though they had that
Wait, wait,
thing
wait,
at the
wait.
end.
They don't? They don't?
Well,
What?
I'm not going to get political, but I really wish they did exist right now.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Pull up, Cynthia. Pull
Yep,
up.
Pull that helicopter
yep,
up.
yep. But yeah, a lot. Not only because of the way the show was structured, and we really did think thrush existed, but people wrote letters to the UN asking they people who were visitors to the UN asked if they could see Uncle headquarters. So people were really convinced that Uncle really existed. And to top that, Robert Vaughn, David McCallum, which probably broke up David McCallum's marriage, they used to leave every weekend with Chuck Painter and go fly somewhere and appear, and then they would appear on other people's programs. Robert Vaughn as Napoleon Solo is in the Glass Bottom Boat. Yeah, that's the one that Doris Day is in.
Doris Day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
spy
yeah.
movie. He has this like he shows up like split second, and then they showed up on Please Don't Eat the Daisies. Ilya was on Ilya. David McCallum was on Hullabaloo as Ilya, and as Thrush was trying to knock him off as he's trying to be the host of Hullabaloo.
Well, Robert Vaughn was on the Red Skelton Hour as well as kind of as Napoleon, kind of not.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, on Hullabaloo, if you ever get that, David McCallum is on it as Ilya, and they keep attacking him throughout the show. So when we were 10 years old, we were kind of convinced that they were really Solo and Ilya, and there was really an uncle, and therefore there was really a Thrush. What was Thrush made of? It was made of billionaires, ex Nazis, and mad scientists. So yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
well. I mean, I can just say I'm going to take us into what I think of the film, but I will just confirm Thrush does exist, but that is between me and my GP. So I'll leave that there. Helicopter Spies. As I said, I was told this is one of the better ones. I don't think I agree with that assessment. I think I agree with Cynthia's assessment. I think the first two are stronger by quite a mile. Now, I will say, a lot of this film, a lot of the money spent is on the screen. There are big spectacles, there are set pieces that we haven't seen anything like this really in an Uncle film before. I appreciate that. I do find it ironic that a film titled Helicopter Spies features 3 helicopters, whereas the one before
Right.
features about 7 gyrocopters. So, technically speaking, shouldn't the last one been the Gyrocopter Spies?
Right.
But I'll leave that there. What I think this film genuinely suffers from, personally speaking, is just a lack of just some of the magic that I think I look for in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. It just feels like a little bit of a sedate film. It has moments of fun, those set pieces that I'm sure we'll talk about. But as a general holistic piece, I found my mind drifting. I found myself not engaged by the product.
Right.
I found, the villain to be, I mean, wacky, but not interesting. I couldn't tell you what his plot was or really what he wanted to do with it. And by the way, for those keeping track, he has a red throbbing laser, which is one thing we like to keep an eye on here on Spy Hards. But that also you should be checking that with your GP as well. So I think overall, oh, and the other thing, one thing that you can at least enjoy in these Uncle films I found over the year, is that okay, the story might not be interesting, or the villain might not be interesting, or yada yada yada. But the Uncle ladies, or whatever the vernacular is to describe them, I know they have Bond girls, Uncle Lovelies, whatever you want to call them. Some of them are quite animated characters that have, actual fleshed out stories. The two in this film, I mean, do they have a pulse?
I didn't care for Lola Albright. I knew as soon as she walked on, I knew she was, not to ruin it, but something was wrong with her. Carol Lynley was probably more the kind of, we call them innocents, by the way.
Ah,
Anybody who's not an
yeah.
agent is an innocent.
Thank you.
And Norman came up with that idea that we in the audience would then, he thought we would identify with the innocents. And in the beginning, they were mostly female. So Carol Lynley in this movie is closer to the kind of quote unquote innocent that we're used to in the other movies. There's a couple of good things about Helicopter Spies.
Well, hang on. Let me jump in, Cynthia, because I'm going to take us to good things, because I want to hear from Cam. Because Cam is texting me. He's blowing up my phone. He's saying, Scott, I want to get in there. Tag me in, bro. I want to talk Helicopter Spies. Cam, the floor is yours.
So I think I'm in the same boat or helicopter as you two are. I think in some ways this is one of the more well-functioning Uncle movies. In terms of turning a two-parter into a 90-minute film, I think this one actually flows better than a lot of them. It feels like it could be a 90-minute Uncle film, whereas like some of them, it's very jarring. Like you can just feel the gears shifting as they are trying to make some of the previous ones into a 90-minute film. Whereas like this one, I thought it held together pretty well. And honestly, I thought it was maybe a little more propulsive than the two-parter. I find like Uncle two-parters, they can kind of sometimes stay out their welcome a little bit. Whereas I felt like this one, it actually worked a little better. But to me, the problem with this one is it doesn't really have the highs that I associate with the Uncle films. Now, you go back to like a great one like To Trap a Spy, which I legitimately love, and you have great drama there. I constantly go back to that moment of Napoleon looking out the window at the end as the innocent is
Yeah,
returned back to her family.
yeah.
Like, what a great character moment, and kind of gets across the kindness of Napoleon Solo, but also kind of the melancholy life of a spy. Great stuff. Then you look at some of the later ones where they go bananas. There is no human element at all. It's just, let's just be insane. We are going to have Kurt Jurgens with a ski chalet
Yeah.
and like women falling all over him. Sure thing.
Or like Ilya getting crushed into wine in a vat. Because why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
5 daughters. Mhm.
Yeah, like a Batman trap, basically. Like, you're going to go crazy. And like those ones to me give me enough stuff where I go, look, is this a great film? No. But was it memorable? Yes, it was. Whereas this one, it has its moments. I mean, I loved John Carradine popping up as a cult member over and over as the old man who they're waiting to hear him speak. You're taking one of the great actors of, the previous decades and giving him this role where it's basically like an in-joke of, will John Carradine ever speak? That's the kind of like weirdness that I'm at least looking for in something that is a little more of maybe a lesser Uncle story. And it didn't give me as enough of those sparks to really wow me, but
Right.
it's not the worst. In terms of the film adaptations, I still maintain One of Our Spies is Missing is the one where they just completely mangled it. Whereas this one, I go, you know what? In a way, they took the lazy way out because there's very little changes whatsoever to the original. Very, very few.
Very low.
But at the same time, it still kind of works well enough.
So serviceable is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
It's technically, it's like they knew they were gonna make the movie. They went
Mm-hmm.
in. So I think that's why it's managed better. And I think we can thank Boris Sagal, who knew how to
Mm-hmm.
do this kind of movie. So, and Dean Hargrove, I don't have I went through the original script a little bit. I didn't have that much time recently because I was traveling actually. Um, but it's, again, pretty close. So I would agree with you. It's technically, but the fun moments that are often an Uncle are few and far between.
Mm.
So they pop up every once in a while, and if you know what to look for, but not enough. It's a very fourth season, serious, action packed, but not a whole lot of character. Only what Robert Vaughn, Dave McCallum, and the very expensive actors that they hired are are injecting into the story.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my feeling.
Well, let's celebrate some of the good stuff here. Cynthia, as I said, we're coming back to you. You said the things that you do like. Let's talk about that. What's something you think works in the Helicopter Spies?
Well, there's one thing that's obvious, and that's to involve Leo G. Carroll and Waverly Moore, which he
Mm.
often disappears. Uh, in real life, Leo was much older than he told them. Plus, he used to get sick and go to the hospital a lot. So sometimes, and then toward the end, he was forgetting. That's why they hired Lisa Rogers to be his assistant and to say things out loud because sometimes Leo would like lose it. But it was nice to see him in this. He injects himself, and Waverly really, you get us when Waverly shows up, you know that the odds are very, very high, and that this prism must be something very serious, and whoever gets their hands on it. By the way, what's supposed to be happening is John Dehner's character wants that prism because he's going to rent it out to the highest bidder,
Yeah.
but then he goes. Then Luther, who actually designed the safe that he steals it from, that's where the little thrush card comes in the TV show, but also in the movie. That's why I think they thought, "Ooh, he must be part of Thrush because he's really going to use it, and he wants to take over the world, which is what Thrush always wants to do. They always grab small countries and things like that. So the fact that Waverly is around in the series and is in this movie and is injecting himself into the action, sometimes to help out the agents, means that the odds are really stacked against them, and that this is very serious. I'll tell you one small thing, and you have to look for it. I never noticed it till recently. So Solo goes undercover with the guys with the white hair, and he dyes his hair,
Yeah.
and he joins in, and these workers steal the rocket, as you see, but then the bad guys throw them a party, which doesn't turn out too well. But before the booze and the broads arrive, the white-haired guys are sitting around. If you see the movie again, you'll see that they're sitting around a table and they're playing poker, and all the chips are next to Solo.
Yeah, he was winning the game. Yeah,
He won the game. He beat them all, and it's just a small, minor kind of thing. But I could see them setting up the table and saying, "No, no, let's do it this way." So it kind of like if the guys with the white hair had noticed that who this guy was beating them, maybe they would have been more suspicious, and they obviously weren't. So that amused me too. And like I said, the interchange between Solo and Ilya in Uncle headquarters and a couple other places, which are very fleeting, unfortunately, but the two actors can't resist. They often exchange looks and glances and expressions, and you have that in the movie too. It's certainly a serviceable movie. It's certainly done, like you said, technically accurate. It has more. They certainly put more money into it, and you can see that.
Yeah, the action looks good.
Yeah, yeah.
You look at like the heist sequence with, Bradford Dillman suspended. Like there's some good filmmaking going on here. I mean, I will question the old the red paint gun.
Yes. What
but
was that?
outside of that,
Yeah, right.
outside of that, I think
What's that?
it's deadly, Cam. It's deadly, is what it is.
But they have that big rocket at the end. The rocket set up, and it takes off out of a building, and
yeah, the rocket theft, incredibly well done sequence.
Magically turns into stock footage. It's crazy, right? Like,
right,
it's-
yeah, right.
And they use different stock footage depending on the version.
Yes,
Huh.
they did. They used two different. And in fact, the coloring is also different in the movie. I think it's Carol Lynley has a striped shirt, and in the movie, it's subdued in the television show, but it's very bright and pink and purple in the movie.
Very weird.
Yeah.
You nerds. Look at the two of you. Colors of t-shirts. Look at this. That's great. It's great.
Yeah.
Cam, something you want to celebrate?
I actually really enjoyed the entire cult subplot.
I bet you did.
Okay.
I really
I
did.
bet.
Like I mentioned John Carradine. I thought he was a riot. But just the idea of kind of tying this into the end of the 60s, you obviously have like the Manson element happening in the late 60s
Yes.
as well that will really culminate in 69. And then like kind of tying it here, I thought it was actually very effective and gave it a lot of atmosphere. When you have Ilya going to the movie theater
Yes.
and they're putting on the presentation and you have the psychedelic imagery in the background, and you have
The Age of Aquarius dancers and stuff like that.
Yes.
Like
yeah,
Yes.
and they're all like kind of druggy looking as
Yes.
they're dancing, and
Kinda druggy looking. Good description, Cam.
and you have Lola Albright like giving the speech in like the platinum wig. I'm like, there is so much atmosphere going on in this moment. Like that's the kind of stuff I love, and you don't have to spend massive budgets to create imagery like this, and I think they do a really cool job. And that extends to like the entire platinum blonde idea, all these guys with the platinum blonde hair.
Yeah, so the woman.
And when you see like Robert Vaughn wearing that wig and going undercover, it looks weird. And I like that everything feels weird to do with this setup. And even like the bizarre little like diner they hang out at, Mom's. I mean, that was kind of cool too, where it's like,
Yeah, isn't that Catherine Freeman who's doing Mom?
who I realized is younger than me, and that made me really depressed.
I didn't think that Danny Boyle would be referencing Helicopter Spies in 28 years later, but here we are.
Right? Yeah.
The gang of Aryan, blonde-headed soldiers at the end of the film is the same in here. I guess
Right.
I guess it's just eternal. This gang, the Third Way, is forever, baby.
Like, that's the stuff I enjoyed. I actually was getting a little frustrated with the villain in the first
Yeah.
half.
Mhm.
The
did.
scientist, like, he's fine. He fits the bill. He is what he is. But, like, once you had Bradford Dillman take over, I don't think he's a spectacular villain either. But by having the cult element, I thought that added a significant amount to my enjoyment, at least.
I was watching Brad Dillman's performance, and I couldn't shake where I thought I knew him from.
Oh, okay.
It turns out I don't, but he looks exactly like the Action Man figure with the eyes that you can move.
Oh,
And so much so that I found the exact doll, and I think they've like modeled it on his head because it's absolutely uncanny.
That's funny.
I
oh,
will be
I
putting a picture of that up
okay.
online this week because once you've seen it, you'll be like, I'm hoping that they got the rights to his face because that is definitely him.
You see, I know him best for Piranha. That's what I know best, but I want to see this picture.
I will arrange it. I might even drop it in the chat so you can see it whilst you guys are talking.
Well, Man from Uncle straddled in the very beginning. It started in '64. Actually, they were filming when Kennedy got shot. He got shot on Robert Vaughn's birthday, which he
Oof.
was not happy. But that was sort of I always call it the cocktails, Frank Sinatra, the Rat Pack. It was, and Solo fit into that. He was the guy who knew how to mix martinis, who wore tuxes. You would find him in Vegas or Monte Carlo. And then as Uncle continued, and they thought they were going to attract older men in the beginning, as it turned out, and it was all teenagers. And then the '60s started changing when the Beatles came in and everything started. So what you're seeing there in the cult, you're right. It connects into Manson, but it also connects into the third season too.
Hmm.
That's a little bit of third season kind of bleeding into fourth season. Fourth season's all the action type stuff. By fourth season, actually in third season, they started trying to bring in what would be for the youth, and it didn't always work. But they would try to bring in that kind of music or that kind of background. So when I saw those young women dancing on the stage, I thought, oh yes, this is still from third season. There was a lot of that in third season, not so much in fourth season, except for this particular movie, I think.
Um, for myself, in terms of the things I want to highlight, there's two sections. One's quicker, and I think I don't tend to notice scores all that much in films. But what I've noticed is some abhorrent music in the previous couple of installments. It felt
Yeah.
better here. It felt like the score mostly fit what was happening on screen and didn't play it to be a farce.
Hmm.
But the thing I wanted to emphasize is that there are some great action moments here. We do turn up to these spy action films for a bit of action. And you talk about the car chase, with that's pretty good. You've also got like the train heist.
Great.
Like, there's a moving train. I'm like, what? They got all that on a TV show budget in the fourth season where there's less money? That's crazy. And then they do have a whole rocket prop with a fake, like, I mean, it's
Right,
not Blofeld's volcano lair,
right.
but it's a TV scaled budget version of it, and it looks great.
And there's some tension to it too. Like you have the was it the Axoid brother
Which
has
one?
like the knife or has
Yeah,
sorry
there's
well
four.
yeah there's I think it's number 3 has the gun on basically all the cult members, and there's this someone leans forward and stabs him, and it like actually ratchets up the tension.
Mhm.
And we're using a word tension that we have not used in the previous Uncle films, like the last few of them. There's not been much at all. It's been more of like the kind of just lighthearted farce kind of stuff. And here, when there was action, and even that fist fight with Napoleon and the bad guy, Bradford Dillman,
Right.
up on the platform, it felt like actually two guys who were fighting like to stay alive, because one of them has a knife and it seems actually dangerous. Like compare that to Jack Palance, who I liked a lot. Fun performance, but there was not a danger factor to that villain in
Mhm.
the same way.
Yes. Well, and that reflects what happened in fourth season. Fourth season becomes serious. Like I said, they get rid of the sleep darts, which Norman was not happy about. Norman had a very liberal socialist uh, uh, politics, which got embedded into the show. So, because I asked him once, there was a lot of talk about whether Ilya was a defector or truly a Soviet Russian.
Mm.
And I asked Norman and Sam, because this was a fight that went on in our fandom for some years in the old days. And so I asked them straight out, I said, is Ilya a Soviet? because there are clues in the first season. Sam buried a whole bunch of them, and if you were smart enough, you got them. In the one with Strigas, Ilya wears a disguise that makes him look like Trotsky. I mean, it's an inside joke, but it's there. So I asked Norman, I said, is he Soviet? He said, oh, yeah, of course he is. And I said, what's your politics? And he said, do you know who John Reed is? And I said, actually, I do. He is the man who was played by Warren Beatty in Reds, and he is the only American who is buried in Red Square. And he said, well, in college, I belonged to the John Reed Society. And I said, okay. And then one time I was with Norman because I knew Norman pretty well. And I was out in California. We were at actually a media literacy type conference, but we were in a very wealthy swim club, which I'm sure would never have allowed me in again. And we were standing on the balcony looking out to the Pacific Ocean. And Norman sidles up to me and says to me, this is where the revolution starts. It's like, okay. So that's embedded in Man from Uncle. I mean, and fourth season, that's why they wanted to go more serious, because they realized that they had gone too much where it was comedy, and Ilya lost his accent. They never mentioned anything about his background or anything. None of the writers in third season really cared. And as I said, in first season and second season, they had about 6 writers. In third season, they had 20, I heard.
Yeah.
Writing 26 scripts. You guys are into Star Trek. So in Deep Space Nine, I don't know if you guys, anybody is a fan of
Yeah,
Okay.
We've interviewed most of the writers on that show. Yep, we know them
Okay.
well.
So Peter Allen Fields was involved in that. So was Sam Ralph for a while. And if you go on the, what do they call that? The promenade in Deep Space Nine, you will notice a Del Flores that's on the menu. And also, if you remember Garrick, he ran a tailor shop and he was a spy.
Yep.
So that, again, was embedded purposely to tie them into Man from Uncle, because some of the Man from Uncle writers were involved in Deep Space Nine. And in fact, by the way, Gene Roddenberry used to go drinking with Sam Ralph. A lot of the stuff that is in Star Trek started in Uncle.
And a lot of actors too. A lot of actor crossover. Yeah.
Yes, they all knew each other, but the relationship, the 2 main characters, Kirk and Spock. In fact, I wrote an academic article on this. Kirk and Spock are Solo and Ilya. Spock is Ilya. He's an alien, literally. Ilya was an alien, and Solo and Kirk have a lot in common, and yet these 2 very different people learn to work together and hang out together. And when Gene wanted to get Star Trek going, he went to Norman and he said, would you be the producer? Because they had worked together on The Lieutenant. And so he said, could you be the producer, of Star Trek, the executive producer? And Norman said, are you kidding? You know what that's going to cost? You can't possibly pay for the sets you're going to need. And he declined. So, and that was one of the problems that brought down Star Trek. They just couldn't pay for that many sets, whereas with Man from Uncle was shot on the MGM studios, so they didn't have to worry. So
yeah,
but there's a lot of crossover.
I'll wrap up the likes with this final thought, and they say fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you, or one way around or the other. But suffice to say, by this point, I've been lied to this many times by Uncle film titles that I'm actually just beginning to enjoy it. So I'm genuinely hoping the next film does not feature anything about how to take over the world, because there are definitely not enough helicopter spies in this film.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Agents, we don't expect you to talk. We expect you to buy a subscription to our Patreon.
Yee. That's right. Over on the Spy Hard's Patreon, we're covering all your favorite spy TV shows, as well as popular films from the most iconic secret agent actors of all time.
Cam, why don't you share some intel on our latest assignment?
Well, Scott, our 5th birthday celebration continues as we tackle another 5th entry in a franchise. Was this a good idea? I don't know. But everyone, share our pain as we revisit Star Trek V, The Final Frontier from 1989. What does God need with a starship? Well, we're going to ask ourselves that question, plus also, why would God let William Shatner direct a Star Trek film? Beam on over and listen in, folks.
So accept your mission and help support your favorite spy movie podcast at patreon.com/spyhards.
But before we activate the 4th protocol, let's get back to the spy jigs.
Right, well, we've celebrated the good stuff. Let's talk about some of the bad stuff before we get out of here and move on to our next film. Dislikes section. Cynthia, we've already critiqued it a little bit. Is there anything in particular you want to pick on about the film that really didn't work for you?
I think much what it wouldn't be the movie that I would show somebody if I was trying to give them an example of Uncle and try to win them over and be fans. If you were a fan already and you know what happened in the 4th season, it might be interesting for that reason. So it is, I mean, if you like action adventure and there's a certain amount of science fiction in it, the cult, that kind of stuff, the rocket, the prism, uh, that's there. But it's not one of my favorites. Uh, I think it was well financed and all of that. It's technically acceptable. There are a few things, but it wouldn't be one of my favorite movies. No.
Well, you mentioned you weren't a fan of the Azalea character. What was it about her that jumped out?
I think she just didn't do much. I could tell. Well, I knew by the actress right away, even if I didn't know the actual story. I knew she was no good. I mean, and she just smiles a lot. Well, she drives. She drives really fast. At one point, Solo thinks she's going to kill him, but he's kind of hoping he makes it through this mission because of the way she drives, and that comes in handy later on when they're escaping, obviously. But I just didn't think there were so much better female villains. Angelique is wonderful, and I wish she had been repeated. Serena, Narcissus. There were so many good female villains who dealt with Solo, and they would have relationships, and things would happen. Lola would just smile, kind of evilly, or like she kind of knew stuff was happening. But not much was happening with her character. And as soon as you see her with supposedly John Dehner, her husband, you know she's going to betray him. I mean,
Yeah.
I could like within 2 minutes. And if okay, I'll take her as a villain, but so what? I mean, the biggest thing she did was get on stage with the women with the blonde hair.
Well, you just compare that to like the lady who has the pizzeria or the lady who actually has the cat fight with her in the same film. Like they both are far
Yes.
stronger.
Think of Janet Leigh.
Yeah, Janet Leigh. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
Janet Leigh is a very good villain.
Far stronger.
Yes.
She's
Far more
great.
memorable than this.
Yes.
It has that great like run moment.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
Crazed.
Yeah, so I think the villainess is weak. I did like the villains. I thought John Dehner, I always liked him as an actor, so he was a little strange, but he was okay to me. Bradford Dillman put in this like kind of funny voice, so
Mm.
you knew he was. I mean, again, as soon as he was, I mean, you can tell he's not right even in the very beginning when Solo recruits him. So you kind of set up already that something's going to happen, that this is not going to go the way they expect. I did like the little twist that they put in, that they give you one villain, but that's not really the villain, and then there's another one and all that. But yeah, there were so, like you just pointed out, Janet Leigh was so much more superior. The innocent in that, the Italian girl who is the mobster's
Niece, I think it was.
niece, and they're forcing Solo to marry her, which is kind of funny. Um, there's none of the that's real third season stuff, but Concrete Overcoat, I think, even though it's third season, although I like Jack Palance too, I always liked him. At least it has some of that look to it, Whereas this is, very straightforward fourth season, and you really have to. I could see people falling asleep in the middle of it or losing the thread, liking certain parts to it, but not like it doesn't. I don't know. It's not for the whole thing, but that was true of fourth season, where they had very strong action, but not memorable. Uh, there were a few characters, but not as much as they could have been.
Cam, what about you?
For me, the dislike, the writing in this is like highly dubious. There's a lot of things going on. You have the Bradford Dillman. I was behind this all along. I masterminded this entire project. Where you go, hold the phone, and you start doing the backward steps on this one, and it gets very convoluted. But then you tie into that the Annie character, whose husband is in a Turkish prison, as we are told
Mm.
at two different points, which clearly mark the two separate episode parts where she has to remind the audience what's going on. But
I'd also got so bored that I'd forgotten. So I actually needed the reminder. Thank you.
but she is tagging along because she has it out for Luther Sebastian. And the fact she's tagging along implies that she would know all along that Uncle was going to be doing this. Like, why else is she waiting for them in Tehran? There's no reason for her to actually be there unless she would know that Uncle was going to go recruit Sebastian and bring him on this mission with them.
Right.
So it's like, if you're going to play it more serious and remove the camp, because when it comes to like the camp stuff, you don't question the logic as much. But if you're going to play it more, a little more propulsive, a little more focused on an action plot, these types of questions start to pop into your head. And I feel like they are still kind of, even though they're going a little more serious, they're embracing that kind of third season mentality of like, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Don't worry about that kind of stuff. And if you're going to ask me to at least follow the dots, then you kind of got to connect them a little better.
Yeah, I think that's probably kind of what pushed me away from it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't sit here picking apart the plots of Man from U.N.C.L.E. films, or to be fair,
No.
many spy films from the 1960s, because it really is a mixed bag of that in that decade, certainly. But yeah, like if you sat there and actually started writing this out, it really does sort of stretch credulity there.
It does. I also had a dislike from my girlfriend Sue, who watched a chunk of this movie.
Welcome to Sue's Corner, everyone. Go on, Sue.
That's right. As soon as I saw that there was a whole segment in Tehran, and she is from Iran and lived not too far away from Tehran, I was like, I am going to show her this section of the movie to get her critique of 1960s depiction of Tehran.
This is kind of like when they showed like London a couple of films ago, and I took that very personally. It looked like something from the 1980s, to 1800s, I should say, like the 19th century or something. Yeah, it was a real backwards water place. How did Tehran fare up?
Not well. Not well. There was
okay.
a legitimate, just like blank stare. Turns to me because she's like, "That's not what our airport ever looked like." I'm like, just wait. And we got to that marketplace, and she's just like, "Have they ever been to Tehran?" I'm like, I doubt it. She's like, "It's Marrakesh. They've created Marrakesh." I'm like, well, there you have it. And then when it got to the interior of the scientists, place with all the furnishings and what have you, those didn't pass the test either. She's like, almost none of this is Persian. So
No.
Man from U.N.C.L.E. did not pass the test at recreating 1960s Tehran, it would appear.
Well, we'll deal with the knock list, but it's clearly not making her list.
No, it was not. She was fascinated by it. She even says, "How did this happen?"
Oh, I think we know how it happened.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we know.
But I mean, actually, those sets were better than what they usually used for Casablanca and places like that. So I was actually surprised that they even had more of a street for Tehran.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Do you guys count Men in Black as a spy movie?
Thank you for asking that question. Yes, we did. We covered them 5 years ago.
Okay, because Men in Black, is based on Man from U.N.C.L.E. The original creator of Men in Black said he wanted to do Man from U.N.C.L.E. but with space, and that's why they walk around in those suits all the time because Uncle walked around in suits, and why the thing that they hold up looks like a pen communicator, and it's yeah, and if you notice how they go into their secret
Hmm.
headquarters is very similar. They have a Waverly character, and yeah,
And Rip Torn was, of course, in The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
yes, oh yeah, Alexander the Greater affair.
There you go.
Yep.
There you go. And ironically, also, I wish I had a neuralizer right now to remove this film from my brain. Um, I don't have any additional dislikes. I've discussed it already. So I'm just going to take us over to final notes and we'll do the knock list. At 22 minutes, you can mark it on your watch. There is a shot. They are looking up at one of the characters. I think it is the character of Bradford Dillman. It's Bradford Dillman playing Luther Sebastian, I should say. And you can see the studio ceiling.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
It's about a third of the frame, unfortunately, and then they cut away and then go back to the shot, and it's still there. So they left it in 2 whole shots. Well done, editor of this film. And I have a question I want to bring up, but I also want to say I did like seeing the genesis of what went on to be Blofeld's mobility chair that you see in No Time to Die in this film. Nice to see someone taking a chair lift.
Oh, I'd like to think that that's how you say goodnight to your wife as well. At the end of a night, you just like goodbye and just go up through
I
the
said
ceiling.
good night and then just very slowly, dramatically,
very
Yeah.
slowly.
That is how I do it. That is how I do it. Cynthia, do you have any additional notes you want to bring up?
I guess one thing to keep in mind is there still is a Man from U.N.C.L.E. community. It's not small. Uh, we used to be on, we're still on LiveJournal, but we're all over the place. And you guys mentioned the 2015 movie. Henry Cavill has a huge following,
Mm-hmm.
and they have stumbled over the Man from U.N.C.L.E. film. And apparently, I've been seeing a lot of it coming up now, where people who are discovering the 2015 movie uh, are now asking, well, why can't there be a sequel, or why isn't there a Man from U.N.C.L.E? And this happens. We call it the curse. It
Mm-hmm.
happens every once in a while where they get going with a project and then it doesn't go anywhere. But it still has a really heavy duty fandom. I used to think that everybody was old, but they're not. A lot of people are coming in, like I said, through the 2015 movie. Um, I don't know. A lot of people also complain about Army Hammer not looking like David McCallum, but Sam Rolfe's original description of Ilya fits Army Hammer. So,
Oh.
I don't think it's dead. I think it may be coming back again, and maybe people will then go back to this movie. But I would. This isn't one of the ones that I would recommend.
I don't think Army Hammer not looking like Ilya Kuryakin is his biggest concern right now.
I
No.
know his biggest concern, but in the fandom, that was a big deal.
I can imagine. But yeah, we did speak with Jeff Kleeman, who sort of produced and wrote on that film a couple of years ago now. I think that interview came out, and he gave us a little bit of an update on the future, and it doesn't look great. Just mostly due to the rights right now. It's just not in a good place,
Right.
and that film didn't do all that well.
Yeah.
So that's where that is. Cam, any notes from you?
I had a couple. Flamethrower Gardener is pretty awesome and a great punk band name.
Yes, I would listen to them. And of course, we saw a flamethrower being used in what was it recently? There was a spy film that came out recently that had one. Not really a spy film. Ballerina. There you go.
Yeah, that was great. Another note I had, it was great seeing Sid Haig pop up in a very small role as a security officer who has to prove his
Oh,
loyalty
yeah.
by eating cyanide. And Sid Haig, of course, in a lot of the big blaxploitation films with Pam Grier.
Yeah.
He was in the original Star Trek and obviously the Rob Zombie horror films as well, especially Devil's Rejects, which is great. So I was very excited to see him. And then my last note I had was the moment with the trapdoor where Annie and the Axoid brother fall through the ground is so abrupt and startling. It looked like they literally just like dropped those two actors down a hole. It was actually incredibly well staged.
I wish I could comment, but I think I was just not watching the film at that moment.
Oh no!
I may have heard the
That helicopter
disturbance.
had crashed.
I was trying to get control back of the helicopter. It was rocky, man. So people have to let me know. I will check the tape and I'll get back to you.
Okay, well, fair enough.
I actually won't check the tape. I'm not going to watch this film again. Sorry,
No.
probably not.
Knock list.
Knock list.
Knock list. The knock list. The knock list.
Knock list. Knock list. Knock list. You need to pick a side.
All right, it's time. Let's bring this helicopter in for landing. Knock list. Is it making the list of the greatest spy movies of all time? Cynthia, you are our esteemed guest.
No.
I already just heard your answer. So no.
Sorry. No.
I think that's okay. I think that's perfectly that tracks, I think, with what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But it's all still to play for. Cam could surprise us. What do you have for us, sir?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm in the same boat. This helicopter is struggling to take off, and it just doesn't deliver, I think, what the best Uncle films do. And I still stand behind, like, To Trap a Spy is the highlight for me so far.
Yeah. As I said at the beginning, I was told this is one of the better ones. I guess it technically is one of the better of the middle of the pack, but of the top of the line, it is not anywhere near To Trap a
Right.
Spy. So, reluctantly, that's another miss for the man from U.N.C.L.E. It's a no from me, 3 no's, and as such, the Helicopter Spies has missed a landing. It's careened off and blown up in a corner. Don't worry, no one was in the helicopter and was injured in the crash, but the helicopter didn't make it.
Oh well.
Oh well, no one cried over that one. It's been a pleasure talking about it, though, and Cynthia, it's been a pleasure having you here on the show, bringing a terrific load of U.N.C.L.E. insight. Now, I mentioned your book at the start. Could you tell us a little bit more about it and where people can find it?
It's called Work Text: Investigating the Man from U.N.C.L.E. It was published all the way in 2013, but it's still around. I would recommend not buying the library version, which is over $100. You can get it for paperback, and also it's on a lot of the resale ones too. What's different about it from John Heitland's book is excellent, and it came out in 1987. But his is more production oriented. Mine was more about creativity and development. And what happened was, as you are, when you're a PhD student, I had a dialogic model, and basically I did this in my PhD is in 2001, so I was working on this in the late 90s. And I went to an academic conference and I was showing them my model, and it was about how audiences can influence creative people and how creative people interact with audiences, which, by the way, Norman did. And Man from U.N.C.L.E. is one of the first times this really happened seriously. And I showed this model, and people said, this is before the internet, and people said, oh no, that can't possibly be true. And then I showed the model maybe 10 years later, and they said, yeah, okay, so social media, big deal. So, we were a little ahead of the time. But what struck me was when I was doing my PhD, I needed a subject, and I had this model, and a friend of my advisor said to me, well, the fans on one side, and some of the creative people, by that time, Norman for sure, on the other, and you can talk to both. So I was able to talk to David McCallum, getting the fans who pushed him in Macy's, and I actually could talk to one of the people who mobbed him in Macy's.
Wow.
So I could get both sides of it. And that's what the book is about. The book is about step by step. It starts, and I was able to talk to Norman, Sam, Doug Benton, who apologized for the girdle from U.N.C.L.E. to me. He said, tell the fans I'm sorry. I was able to talk to Robert Vaughn and David McCallum and Alvin Ganzer, eventually Stanley Robertson from the NBC. So I was able to actually interview and get the background and why I was really interested in the creative process. And that's what the book is about, from the very, very beginning to the I wanted to keep going. I stuck the fan stuff in, the fandom in between, but I was at the end of when the series got canceled, and my advisor said, "Stop now," and because I had one of the largest dissertations from the communication department in Rutgers, so I beat everybody except one other woman. So I was like, "Okay," she said, "Stop now." So I did. But in the last couple of years, anybody wants to go on Google Scholar, they'll see plenty of articles about Uncle fandom. And actually, I was at a Bond conference because Bond is connected to Uncle and all of that. Was Uncle Bond is the bedroom spy and Solo is the living room spy. And I think you said in Bill Koning's podcast how Bill was making the point that he thought Solo was more moral or more ethical than Bond, that he cared more about, you point out the end of Vulcan affair, and that's true, So what do they used to call it? Sex, snobbery, and sadism for Bond.
Mm,
I think Uncle took those three things and changed them. So there was no snobbery. The innocent was an average person. The sex was limited and nice, and the sadism, because of NBC, kept saying no, no, no. And also, Norman did not like killing people in the show. So in the early seasons, there are sleep darts,
right.
and he kept talking to Anthony Spinner in fourth season when they were making Helicopter Spies. Please use sleep darts, and Anthony kept saying, we'll get them in somehow, but they didn't. And so so that was the difference too. But that's part of the book, how they made those decisions, all the creative decisions in the show, and the input from the fans and the interaction between the creative people, especially Norman in the beginning, with the fandom, which was already coalescing in the audience. That's what the book is about.
Well, long-time listeners to the show will know, especially with our interview series, we love talking to directors and screenwriters, cinematographers. The creative process is usually what calls out to us too. It's really we love talking to actors as well, but really it's about sort of behind the lens is really what gets our juices flowing. And that's why I picked up a copy of the book about a year or so ago now. So what we'll do, I'll put the links in the show notes below. People can
Thank
go and
you.
grab a copy of it there. And are you findable online at all, Cynthia?
Yeah, you can go to Amazon. It's still available on Amazon. There are still, like I said, people who are reselling, and I'm all over. If you Google C.W. Walker with Man from Uncle, or Cynthia Walker with Man from Uncle, or fandom, I pop up all over the place. So my students constantly Google me to find out what I'm doing.
If your students are listening, please don't Google me. I've got a rap sheet as long as your arm. No, I'm just kidding. Dr. Cynthia Walker, it's been a genuine pleasure having you here. Thank you for spending the hour or so with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, folks, the Helicopter Spies took off and came down for a bit of a rough landing.
They did indeed. It was like one of those like comedies where you just see the helicopter come straight down hard into the ground.
Yeah. There was no steel delicatessens here.
There were not. No.
Well, we were told that the Helicopter Spies was one of the better ones. I think that isn't the case. I think it's still To Trap a Spy for me is number one with a bullet.
But better than One of Our Spies is Missing by a considerable margin.
For sure. But that wraps up our second to last Uncle film. We've got one more mainline one to go, and then, of course, we have The Return in the 1980s.
Yeah, that one is the one I'm actually really interested to watch.
Yeah, because that one is obviously the actors coming back to the roles. It probably had a bit more money than some of these did and was released in like widescreen and stuff. Like it had a bit more production behind it. And of course, it has quite a famous cameo.
Exactly. It's the cameo largely, but also just like trying to recreate the magic of a 1960s spy film or spy series, I should say, like in a 80s TV movie. Like, to me, that is something I'm fascinated by.
But like that was the thing. Like Star Trek was making films in the 80s from the 60s show.
It's
Even
true.
like, Get Smart did the nude bomb in the 80s. Like it was the thing.
Well, Get Smart also did Get Smart Again, which we tackled on the Patreon some
true.
time ago. And it's like, sometimes it's really difficult to recapture that magic. Star Trek did by changing it quite a lot. Like, the films
True.
are very different in form than the original series was. So I am curious to see, like, if they're trying to channel the 60s in the U.N.C.L.E. TV movie, or if they are, like, just kind of going full 80s.
Is there any whales in Return of the Man from U.N.C.L.E?
There be whales, I hope.
Oh, does it blow? We'll find out. But that's the uncles for now. But the mission continues. Cam, what are we talking about next week?
Next week, we are tackling 2020's Ava, starring Jessica Chastain. She did not have the best of luck with the 355. She was great, though, in Zero Dark 30. So we're going to find out where Ava falls in that equation.
Yeah, I guess in Spy Hard's terms, she's had one good one and one bad one. So where is this going to fall? It's all to play for. And we have a great guest joining us as well. So your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to join us next week as we take a look at 2020's Ava. If you like what you heard in this episode, please consider joining us over on our Patreon, patreon.com/spyhards. Over 100 bonus episodes, and who doesn't want more of us in your life?
That's right. Who knows what we're doing over there? There's Get Smart Again. You could be running and listening to the episode on Get Smart Again, plus so much other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, sign up today and just get more of our silky smooth tones. That alone is worth the price of admission. Never mind the films.
Exactly.
And also, it basically justifies Cam's editing if you listen to
it. It also pays for my helicopter fees from going to and from, any place I want to go.
Yeah. And if you want to continue the discussion online about Man from U.N.C.L.E., come and join us on social media at Spyhards, SPYHARDS, wherever you get your social medias. But until next time, folks, goodbye and keep the faith.